Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Eddie Pauline, President and CEO of Ohio Life Sciences. We're the trade association for Ohio's life science industry, and AI, of course, is having a big impact on that industry as well as many others. I'm also a proud member of the CMC Board of Trustees. I'm so pleased you're all here with us today at today's forum. Thank you to today's forum sponsors, Regionomics and Accenture, and thank you to the Grange Insurance Audubon Center for hosting us once again. We're also grateful for the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream. That's being carried on CMC social media platforms, YouTube, etc. Let's thank all of those who are supporting us today. The title of today's forum is Exploring the Promise and Peril of Artificial Intelligence. How does that sound? You might be interested to know that this is the first ever CMC forum title that wasn't written by a human being. That's right, we asked ChatGPT what the title of the forum about itself should be called, and it came up with a pretty good one, even though we're a little concerned with why it chose the word peril. Hopefully, the future of AI is more promise than peril. Today, with both human and electronic panelists, we'll explore the world of artificial intelligence and the profound changes to society that AI is bringing. Please welcome today's esteemed panelists. I'll start with the humans. First, Kevin Lloyd, Chief Operations Officer for Color Coded Labs and the co-founder and CEO of entertainment software company MYLE. Is it MYLE? Okay, all right.
There you go.
All right. I don't know if it's an acronym or MYLE. Yeah. Thank you.
Here we go.
Dr. Andrew Perrault, Assistant Professor with the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at The Ohio State University. Dr. Padma Sastry, author and adjunct professor with Franklin University. Our first ever electronic panelist, ChatGPT, a chatbot powered by artificial intelligence, which will be joining us on screen. And our moderator, Dr. David Staley, Associate Professor in the Departments of History, Design, and Educational Studies at The Ohio State University, and President of Columbus Futurist. Inside joke, I like to refer to him as Ohio State's official futurist. We worked on that a little bit ago, but maybe it'll happen one day, David. You can read more about today's panelists in your forum flyers. David, look forward to the conversation, and I'll hand the podium over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you all for being here today. My first question is for everyone here in attendance. I don't know if we can ask it of the live chat people. So I guess two questions. First of all, how many of you have used ChatGPT? Wow. How many of you sort of use it on an ongoing, sort of regular basis as part of your work? So we've experimented with it, and some of us are admitting, maybe some of us aren't admitting to using it as an ongoing part of our work. As my first, and I'm going to come back to this question in just a moment, but I think my first question is, what do we mean by ChatGPT? What is ChatGPT? And I think, Kevin, I'm going to ask that first of ChatGPT.
All right, here we go. Let's go back for a second. And I'm switching keyboards, so y'all have to bear with me for a second. Chat. If I could type better, GPT. All right. Let's see what it says. Hold on one second. Let's try that one more time. Here we go. What is ChatGPT? And let's do it this way, y'all. Hold on. I think you all can see, and we wanted it to actually, it should actually state it. Hold on a second. Here we go. This is what happens when you try to use technology real time, right? All right. Here we go. Let's try it again.
sometimes lead to unexpected outcomes or misunderstandings. While AI language models like ChatGPT are designed to generate coherent and contextually relevant responses, they may occasionally produce responses that may not fully align with the intended meaning or context. AI models rely on the patterns
Let's
and
do
data
this
they were
real
trained
quick, y'all.
on,
Hold on.
and their responses are based on statistical probabilities rather than true understanding. OpenAI continues to work on improving and refining AI.
That's what you do when you stop it from talking, okay? And let's try this one more time. Here we go. And let's do this.
And for the benefit of the other panelists, I'm going to ask you what you think of its definition.
And for whatever reason, it doesn't want to say it out loud, so
Just read out.
why don't I read it this time? So ChatGPT is an AI language model developed by OpenAI. It is based on GPT, which is generative pre-trained transformer, architected and especially designed for generating human-like responses in conversational context. ChatGPT has been trained on a vast amount of text data from the internet, enabling it to understand and generate coherent and contextually relevant responses. It can be used for a variety of tasks, such as providing information, answering questions, engaging in conversation, offering suggestions, and more. However, it's important to note that ChatGPT is a machine learning model and may occasionally provide incorrect or nonsensical answers. And sometimes it may challenge you technically as well.
Would we add or subtract to that definition?
So it's pretty good. There's some technical details that maybe are important. This is a model that is designed to take as input some words and then predict the next word. That's all the underlying model does. So it creates this kind of illusion that it's answering the questions you're asking, and there's a little bit of special sauce to make that happen, but really it's not a conversational model. At least I'm not sure that's a totally fair definition.
So let me start with what AI means to me. So I want to go back maybe 20 years from now behind. And I used to work for a company called AT&T Bell Labs, if any of you remember. Okay, so I see a thumbs up there. So in AT&T Bell Labs, I won a contest one time. The contest gave me a thing called Palm Pilot 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. I don't even know how many people remember that. It looked like a phone, and I could take it to meetings. I could put my notes in there. I could put a calendar entry. I could do whatever I wanted, like a little notebook. I would come back to my desk. I would hook it up with a cable, and the whole thing would sync up with my computer. And what a smart thing, I thought. I thought, it's so smart. And a couple years later, they gave wireless connectivity to it. So I could actually do this while I was going in a meeting room, come back, whatever. Now, 20-some odd years later, what has the smartness in technology has become? Right now, I can pass through airport security without even taking out my travel papers. It looks at my picture. It knows exactly where I've been, what my passport number is, what my visa, this, that, and everything. And it gives me, the door opens, and I pass right through it. So that's what the smartness in technology, or AI, has developed into. Very promising, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next half hour. But that's sort of like my, I guess, my opening thoughts, as to say, for artificial intelligence.
Kevin, any response to its definition, ChatGPT's definition?
Yeah, so I think the components in regards to the fact that it allows you to put information in and get information out, right, is the key thing. And I look forward to actually sharing more about how we utilize that from a personal perspective as well. Yeah. All right. So if it's okay to lead into that?
By all
Okay,
means.
great. So for me, as an entrepreneur, right, working with a number of different ventures, we actually utilize chat on a regular basis, especially when it comes to general questions, right? It could even be in regards to contracts or agreements. It'd be in regards to business models. So a lot of the things that we think about, like, I wish I could do this, or what if we could do this? You can put that information into chat and ask that question and get a response. In a lot of cases, it will validate your business model. You can ask for certain things like, literally, like provide a business model or an executive summary for this type of business, and it'll literally spit that thing out for you in a matter of seconds. And that's where we see a lot of the benefit from an entrepreneurial or business side of ChatGPT.
Andrew, I'd like to go back to something that you said a moment or two ago, something in fact of that ChatGPT is not a conversation model or a conversation partner. What did you mean by that?
So as it says in the definition, it's trained on massive data. So some of the major sources of that data are many popular books for the past 50 years, all of Wikipedia, and a bunch of social media data from social networks like Reddit. And when it is responding, when it gives this illusion of responding to what you're saying, it is completing what you started writing. It's just trying to predict what words would appear next. So in terms of evaluating a business plan, you can think of it as giving a kind of similar evaluation as you would get from an expert on Reddit. Like if you were going to go post on a subreddit and say, this is my plan, what do you think of it? That's the kind of response you should expect.
So I guess, if you like the idea of ChatGPT being a panelist here today, applaud and thank Doug Buchanan for that. If you don't like the idea, then point the finger at me. Because I write a monthly column for Columbus Underground called Next on the Future. This past April, I had a conversation with ChatGPT, and that was a question I asked it, are we having a conversation? And what it told me was that it's having a simulation of a conversation. So I said, so we're not actually having a conversation. Is that part of what you mean by this, Andrew? I'm curious, the rest of you. Can we have a conversation? This is part of what we're trying to test out here today. Can we have a conversation with ChatGPT?
So the question now is ChatGPT a conversational model?
Let's find out. Let's not find out. Let's see what ChatGPT
Yes,
is.
ChatGPT is designed to be a conversational model. It is trained to generate responses to user inputs and engage in dialogue. You can ask questions, have discussions, seek advice, or chat about various topics with ChatGPT. However, it's important to note that as an AI model, ChatGPT may not always provide accurate or reliable information. It should be used for informational purposes only and not as a substitute for professional advice.
Even though it just said before that it's a source of advice. Padma, what do you think about the idea of conversing with ChatGPT for its advice?
For the ChatGPT?
Yeah, to receive its advice. I would clearly go to you for advice on something. What do you think about the idea of approaching ChatGPT for its advice?
So I use ChatGPT for generic questions. If I want to look for directions or maybe a diagnostic kind of a question. But oftentimes I see ChatGPT not give me the accurate answer. Obviously, it's given a disclaimer right there, because it really depends on the data it's really pulling it out of, right? So that's one of the peril, if you can talk about. So we have to put the data in it for us to get back the data in a logical, sensible form. So unless the data is accurate, unless the data is current, you're only going to get what you put in there, and that's why it's called generated AI. If I'm right, Andrew. So so for example, GPS, for example, you could be using the GPS to go somewhere. It's only going to be giving you accurate directions as far as the accuracy of the data and how current the data is inside the GPS that it's drawing out of. So I heard this story the other day from a good friend of mine, and he took a 600-mile bike trip, wherever, and he used his GPS to go from town to town, and he went almost 600 miles, and then guess what? He came upon a bridge, and the bridge is broken, and there's no other way for him to go, right? So he's standing there, and he's thinking, how am I going to cross this bridge? Because the GPS is telling him, just go, keep on the road, whatever it says, right? It's very frustrating when you come to a point where the data isn't accurate. So one of the things that we have to remember about ChatGPT or any other chatbot is it's really taking information out of what you've already put in and giving it back to you. So the data is as good as what the data resides in there for.
So I'll just ask a question here. How accurate is the information provided by ChatGPT? Let's see what it says.
Chat's responses are generated based on patterns and knowledge present in the data it was trained on. While it strives to provide accurate information, it's important to note that it can sometimes generate incorrect or unreliable responses. The model's responses are based on statistical patterns rather than true understanding, and it may occasionally produce plausible-sounding but incorrect or nonsensical answers. OpenAI, the organization behind ChatGPT, has implemented measures to improve the model's reliability and fact-checking capabilities, but it's still possible for errors or inaccuracies to occur. Therefore, it's always advisable to verify information from reliable sources and not solely rely on the responses provided by ChatGPT or any other AI model.
Given that, and I don't disagree with that, given that, should we be relying on ChatGPT at all? If it's going to make mistakes and errors, should we be relying on it? Especially if I'm going to ask its advice.
Yeah, it's kind of like the eat at your own risk kind of thought process. I would say it's similar to this, right? So I recently was working on a project with some friends, and we were talking about some things and some key issues. And I said, well, just drop it in the chat and let's see what it says. And based off the response, there was no way we would follow that guidance, right? It's like, okay, go do your due diligence. So it's one of those situations where you have to realize that it's open source information. If it's bad, it's like bad data in, it's bad data out, right? So I think we have to be cautious at this point in time until we can get something that says like fact check %, right? So it's one of those type of situations in my thoughts.
Andrew, tell us a little bit more about mistakes. Why does ChatGPT make mistakes? Is it just simply a matter of data? I mean, we sometimes hear tell of ChatGPT hallucinating. This is the term that's used for it.
Yeah, so obviously there are mistakes in the data. That's clearly a key component. But there are also limitations that come from the model itself, right? The model is very big, but it's not infinitely big. It doesn't reproduce the data perfectly. One example where you can easily see this kind of error is if you try to play chess against it. It will pretty soon start suggesting moves which are impossible given the board state. So it's just hard for it to track things through language that are, say, inherently visual. There are technical limitations there.
I had begun by asking the audience here if they use ChatGPT, and I'm just curious to your reactions. What do we make of the fact that lots of people have tried it as much as they're using it sort of regularly? Not even maybe half of the audience here. Do you have any reaction to this response, Padma?
So actually, coming back to your original point, ChatGPT, right, is a big player for professors like Andrew, me, and a whole bunch of professors sitting here. So I teach an ethics for computer programmers in OSU, computer science, which is a very interesting class because one of the things that we try to get out of that class is for the computer programmers to develop technology that's socially responsible, right? So you can't just write code to do anything and everything. And ChatGPT is one of the topics that students love to write about. And one of the students even did the ChatGPT write a report, and he wrote a report, and he compared the two. A lot of differences, right? And exactly like how you alluded to, ChatGPT just took information out of the plethora of data out there, put it all together logically, but the student actually reflected on the topic and what it does, and his own intuitive thoughts to it. So the two papers look completely different. So would I use ChatGPT for everything? No. Would I use ChatGPT for some things? Perhaps, depending on the context and the accuracy of what answer I'm going to get and how valuable that answer is going to be to me. So,
can I piggyback on that? Mm-hmm. I think that chat is good for that particular case as well. Like, you can put in a question, like I said, because you may have a thought about something or you may want to go in a certain direction. You can ask a question. It can help either reinforce or help you to formulate the foundation around your thoughts, but then you can customize it to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So I think it's a really good tool in that purpose, especially if you you can't figure something out and you just ask a question. It can kind of get things rolling for you. So I think it's a good resource in that perspective as well.
Yeah, I can add a little to that. I think the most promising applications right now are tasks where it's kind of hard to generate but easy to evaluate. So if you're writing like a really difficult letter, but the letter, you need to convey these points, but you want it to be nice and smooth and in the right register for the context, it can be really helpful there. Where you're working on a topic which is sort of a little bit outside your expertise, that's where it's most dangerous, because it will produce something that looks plausible, but it knows when it's writing a report, the report should have citations, but it's not technically capable of producing the right citation, so it just produces some nonsense, right? And that can be hard even for experts because it looks plausible, but then you go and look up the paper, it doesn't exist.
I want to add to that as well. It's great for refining something that you've already put together, right? So you've written something out and you're like, I think this is good, but I'm not sure. Let me take another spin at it. Instead of you spending the time to go back through it, you drop it in chat, ask it to do it, or you could put a spin on it. You could type something and you can say, make this more creative, right? Or add a certain flavor to it that you want to get across. Or guess what? This is 3 pages. You want it more concise in 1 paragraph. It's ideal for that. It saves you a lot of time as well.
This is the theme I wanted to come to. Let me ask this question first, and I'll ask all 3 of you. And maybe we'll ask ChatGPT. Do you think ChatGPT is intelligent?
I'll let you all start while I type.
So I'll take a quick swing at that. For me, it's not really possible to say that it's intelligent. Part of this is that, so I was a grad student at University of Toronto where the kind of current wave of neural networks came out, and I was there when Jeff and Ilya were introducing their first kind of generative text models. Technically, for me, there's not enough of a difference between how those models worked and how this model works that I can ascribe intelligence to it. But it's really challenging because when you see the internals, it's some of the flashiness on the outside is sort of less effective because you just sort of see the multiplications behind the scenes. And I don't know if this kind of general question of intelligence directly matters or if it's more about what are the consequences. If it is intelligent, how does that change how we should interact with it?
I also think from a different perspective, ChatGPT or any other model that we're going to produce also depends on how much work or effort we put into it to make it work the way we want to. I was just talking to my husband last night, and he's a professor at Ohio State, and he's here in the audience somewhere. And then we were having this conversation about, let's suppose, one of the hardest part for professors is to write up a proposal for a grant, right? You take hours and days, as you know. So what if we use ChatGPT to collect all this information, put together a proposal for me? However, to do that, you really have to give the ChatGPT or whatever tool all kinds of requirements. What is it that you're looking for? How much this thing, how much that? Just a lot of, and you have to use time, your own time, to give it those requirements in a way that the ChatGPT or whatever tool can understand it and then produce it back. Okay, if it did produce it back, now you gotta validate it, right? You can't just take it as it is. You want to validate it against your own thing and say, hey, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And then you gotta test it. And if you really think about how much time you're going to spend, and each proposal is going to be unique from another. You can't just take a proposal and just boom, boom, copy, cut and paste it. So if you really think about it, at some point you're going to reach a saturation point, we were thinking, as well, maybe it's just easier for me to just sit down. And I see a lot of nods out there. But maybe it's as well that I write it myself and not use ChatGPT. So I think there is an element of how much you're ready to sort of work with the prior work, the a priori you have to do before ChatGPT can produce something, let alone be responsible or not. And I think that saturation point, we don't know that yet. Maybe it'll get more intelligent, I don't know. But at this point, we don't know how it's going to be.
So I want to add to that real quick. I would agree. It's based off of which you ask it, right? If you ask it a top-line question, it's going to get you a top-line answer. If you give it more details, it's going to give you more details. Prime example of that, I was showing someone how to use chat, and he does a lot of real estate investment projects. And so we put in some information. It gave us a high-level answer. When I asked him how many units, right, square foot of each particular unit, and he was trying to find out the piping cost for every one of those units. When you put in those details, it literally gives you the entire formula, breaks it all down for you, and that way he can have some type of cost basis, but it actually has the formulas, so you can actually see it. That's very helpful, and where I see a lot of value in it as well. But we did ask chat here as well. Let's see what it says.
ChatGPT is an impressive language model that can generate coherent and contextually relevant responses. It can simulate intelligent conversation to a certain extent. However, it's important to understand that ChatGPT does not possess true intelligence or understanding like a human does. ChatGPT operates based on patterns it has learned from the vast amount of text it was trained on. It can generate responses that often seem intelligent, but it lacks genuine comprehension and knowledge. It doesn't have personal experiences, emotions, or a deep understanding of the world. While ChatGPT can be a valuable tool for generating text and engaging in conversation, it's essential to recognize its limitations. It may...
And I stopped it because we've heard that nonsensical piece before.
Well, here's a similar question. And I'm asking this in part because it's not just ChatGPT, it's other sorts of generative AI applications. DALL-E, for instance, the image generation. Is generative AI like ChatGPT, is it creative?
As to the ChatGPT itself? I don't know.
Generative AI generally, can we talk about it being creative? And again, we've seen examples of images
I
that
think
are...
to an extent, maybe, like I just said previously, it all depends on the context and the question that you pose to it. So it really goes back to what data it has. Like it's saying right there, it's generating out of anything but personal experience, emotions, or a deep understanding of the world.
So let's see. So this time, right, versus just asking that simple question, as I said, let's go a little deeper. Is generative AI creative? If so, how? Provide an example. Let's see what it says.
Generative AI can exhibit a form of creativity, although it is different from human creativity. One way generative AI demonstrates creativity is by generating novel and unique outputs that haven't been explicitly programmed or seen before. It can combine existing patterns, ideas, or data in innovative ways to produce something new. For example, let's consider a text generation model trained on a large corpus of poetry. Given a prompt, the model can generate original poems that adhere to the structure, style, and themes it has learned from the training data. It may generate unique metaphors, wordplay, or emotional expressions that resemble human-created poetry. While the AI model doesn't possess human-like conscious awareness or emotions, it can generate outputs that are considered creative within the context of poetry. Generative AI can also assist with creative tasks by providing novel ideas or inspiration to human creators. It can generate variations of designs, artwork, or musical compositions based on existing examples, allowing human artists to explore new possibilities and spark their own creative process. It's important to note that generative AI's creativity is based on statistical patterns and examples from its training data, and it does...
Yes.
We got it.
We'll concede that. So I've asked ChatGPT to write to write poems. And I've asked it specifically to write a poem in the style of Mary Oliver, or write it in the style of Billy Collins or something like that. And this is my own personal experience. I find the poetry to be terrible, sort of like greeting card quality. Even when I ask it to do, now maybe I'm not inspiring ChatGPT appropriately. Let me ask you a question about the perils here. So. A number of people, and especially in response to ChatGPT, I'm thinking here of Geoffrey Hinton, who's been described, who's at Google, described as one of the godfathers of generative AI, who's been quite concerned, right, that this represents potentially a threat to humanity. Should we really be concerned, or is this sort of apocalyptic talk maybe a little overblown?
Would you like to start because of the ethics piece? Maybe.
I just spoke about it, remember? So one of the peril, or one of the concerns that I think anyone should have about AI is obviously the privacy and just getting into the wrong hands, into the wrong intent. And that's one of the ethical piece that people have to be concerned about. And I think that's the foremost concern that you see in all the papers and et cetera. I mean, there was a Google official that quit the company because of that. and stuff like that. But in my realm, of course, the ethics part I see, as he was alluding to, is really students being able to use ChatGPT to write their papers and to get a grade. And that's quite not ethical, obviously, because they did not put in their effort to write the paper or to research it or whatever. So from my perspective as a teacher, I always warn them that really the balance is to use ChatGPT maybe to get some basic information maybe and validate that it is quite correct as ChatGPT disclaims in here. And then use their own creativity, because creativity is not something that ChatGPT is going to give you. I mean, it's not going to create the paper for you, nor is it going to give you reflective thoughts, nor is it going to give you concluding remarks, whatever it is. So that's the ethical part that I think as teachers, we have to be conscious to make sure students understand the adverse part of using tools like ChatGPT, although it sounds easy, it's easy to put a question in there, it's easy to get a whole paper written out, but it really, the loser is who? The loser is going to be the student because they didn't learn what they were supposed to learn. Make sense?
Yep. So let's see what it says, and then I obviously have my opinion as well, but let's see. Here we go with that mute
While
again.
AI offers
Bias
numerous
and discrimination.
benefits,
AI
there are also
systems can
legitimate
inadvertently
concerns and
amplify
potential
biases
negative
present in the
aspects
data they
associated
were
with its
trained on.
development and use.
If the training
Here are
data
some
is
common
biased or
concerns.
reflects societal
Bias and
prejudices,
discrimination.
Hold on,
AI
looks like
systems can inadvertently amplify biases present in the data they were trained on. If the training data is biased or reflects societal prejudices, the AI model may learn and perpetuate those biases, leading to unfair or discriminatory outcomes in areas like hiring, lending, or law enforcement. Lack of transparency. Some AI models, particularly deep learning neural networks, can be considered black boxes because their decision-making processes are not easily explainable or understandable. This lack of transparency raises concerns about accountability, as it can be challenging to determine how and why a particular decision or prediction was made. Job displacement. AI and automation have the potential to replace certain job roles, leading to concerns about unemployment and economic disruption. While new job opportunities may emerge, the transition period could be challenging for individuals who lose their jobs to AI systems. Ethical dilemmas. AI can raise ethical dilemmas, such as privacy concerns, surveillance capabilities, and the potential for misuse. For example, facial recognition technology has sparked debates about privacy infringement and the potential for mass surveillance. Security risks. AI systems can be vulnerable to adversarial attacks, where malicious actors manipulate or exploit AI models to produce incorrect or harmful outcomes. This includes scenarios like fooling autonomous vehicles' perception systems or tampering with AI-powered recommendation algorithms. Dependence and reliability. Over-reliance on AI systems can lead to issues if they fail or produce inaccurate results. Critical systems like healthcare, transportation, or finance may face significant consequences if AI malfunctions or is not properly validated. Addressing these concerns requires responsible development, robust regulations, and ongoing research to ensure AI technologies are fair, transparent, and aligned with societal values. Ethical frameworks, unbiased training data, and interdisciplinary collaboration are crucial to mitigating these potential negatives and fostering beneficial and trustworthy AI systems.
Oh, sorry about that. All right.
Deployment and regulation of AI technologies.
There you go.
We're trying to shut him up.
Yeah.
Or her up. Which is maybe a cautionary tale here.
Yeah, I thought that. So
I apologize if I have said something to upset or offend you. If there's anything specific
That's
you would like
very
assistance
kind of
with
you.
or
Thank
any
you.
concerns you have, please let me know.
All right, there we go. Finally. So no, but on a serious note, though, I think that this was good because, and we decided to let it play through because if you think about the title of the event, right, and the subject line, and it talks about the perils, this is the other side of why people are concerned about it. So it's important to kind of hear those as well. So, can I?
Yep, sure.
And my last piece on this is, when I explain it to people, I always say with chat and with AI, I consider it the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just like everything else we deal with in society, right? There's a really good side where I think it can help you from a productivity perspective. There's the bad side where, guess what? You can get wrong information, and that could be a negative. And then there's the ugly side, and those are the people that are going to use it for negative intent, right? And that always happens. That's why we have a criminal society. So it's a good, bad, and ugly. It's about us learning more, I think, and adapting the tool and understanding how to use it for good as much as possible. So I'll turn it over.
I just go back to Jeff Hinton's original comments. So I think my read of his concerns is that he's not worried about the capabilities of current systems. So there are people who think that current systems are potentially very threatening, destabilizing, and I wouldn't put him in that category. I think, but he is worried about these catastrophic takeoff scenarios. So the idea that maybe super intelligent AI is just around the corner, and what kind of implications would that have for society at large? There are certainly many people who are the opposite, that are very worried about capabilities of current systems in these ways that this answer kind of focuses on. So bad actors, generation of misinformation, bias, and are not worried about catastrophic takeoff scenarios. The company OpenAI is very much like Jeff. They worry about these catastrophic superintelligence events and not really about short-term issues with trust. Me personally, so the major source of worry about these takeoffs is that it's hard to predict progress, right? Nobody expected that ChatGPT would work as well as it did. It doesn't invent much new technically. It just scales up what we have to more compute. GPT-4 is better than GPT 3.5. Unfortunately, weren't able to use GPT-4 so far here. But I'm not worried about superintelligent AI being just around the corner. I think these systems, we're going to need new paradigms to get there. These systems, we can't scale up much more than they already have been. GPT-4 is like very near the limit of what we can do economically with these ideas. I don't know if that's a fully
Thank you all very
satisfying
much. And we're not finished with this conversation. It's CMC's long-standing tradition to take audience questions. Doug Buchanan is curating questions from today's live stream audience. For those of you with us in person, if you'd like to join Doug and the microphone in the back of the hall there. Out of respect for others, please keep your questions brief and to the point so we can get to as many as possible. Please also keep in mind that questions end with a question mark. Doug, what's our first question? Do we have one from the live stream? Or?
Yes. David, thank you very much, and thank you to today's panelists for this interesting experiment. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Walker Evans with Columbus Underground, whose idea for covering this topic was, or it was his idea to cover this topic today. So thank or blame Walker Evans. I'm just kidding, Walker. Thank you.
Stand up, Walker. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up.
Thank you, Walker. Thank you. Our first question comes from the online audience. Yvonne Sherrill with the Ohio Urban Community Action Network asks, is there a plan to assist marginalized communities, the poor, new citizens, etc., in the growing world of AI as artificial intelligence is transforming every aspect of our daily lives?
Let's see what the response is going to be. Let's hit this unmute. Here we go.
While I can't predict any specific plans or initiatives that have been implemented post my training data, cut off in September 2021, here are some broad strategies and principles that could guide plans to assist marginalized communities in engaging with AI. This is especially important as AI and other emerging technologies become increasingly ubiquitous in everyday life. Education and training. Ensuring widespread access to knowledge and training in AI and related technologies is crucial. This could involve improving STEM education in schools, offering adult education programs, or developing online courses that can reach a wider audience. Infrastructure improvements. Marginalized communities often lack the necessary infrastructure to engage fully with digital technologies, such as high-speed internet access. Investments in these areas can help to bridge the digital divide. Accessibility. AI technologies should be designed with accessibility in mind, ensuring that people with a wide range of abilities can use and benefit from them. This might involve the use of assistive technologies, or the development of AI applications specifically designed to meet the needs of marginalized groups. Inclusive design and testing. AI systems should be developed and tested with diverse populations to avoid perpetuating biases and inequalities. This could also involve employing more diverse teams in the tech industry and seeking input from marginalized communities when developing AI technologies. Policy and regulation. Policies and regulations can help ensure that AI technologies are used ethically and that they benefit all sections of society. This might involve, for example, implementing regulations to prevent algorithmic bias or to
If this were a panelist going on and on, I would be using my body language to sort of say,
Cut it.
and I can't do that with ChatGPT. We just have to cut it. So, is that we don't have to answer this now, but just sort of think to yourself: is that a satisfactory answer? Do you find that an insightful answer, or is it the sort of thing that any one of us in this hall could have generated? Do we have another question?
Yeah. Tyler Bagdasarian here, NG Impact. I've read reports recently that the Pentagon and as well as the Chinese government are racing towards building autonomous soldiers and other weaponry to prevent, I guess on the positive side, the not human loss of life on the battlefield, but on the flip side, using AI technology. Now, to me, that seems like the Terminator in real life, and it's terrifying. So my question is, do you think that we need a Paris Accord type agreement, such as the climate change agreement, Montreal Protocol, to put safeguards in place yesterday to prevent, the worst case scenario from happening?
May I address that? I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. And if you're looking for a model, it's the landmine protocols that the UN have established, for instance. But everything you say, I think, is absolutely correct. And we have to act, I think, today we talk about guardrails all the time. I think we, and whoever we is, has to act today to put those guardrails in place, because that absolutely is coming. Thank you for that. Do we have more questions, Doug? I think so.
Yes, thank you. Question from William Wason, retired from Ohio State. AI has been credited with creating false sources and false information, which I think it's tried to warn us about today. How can we save ourselves from this kind of disinformation?
You want to take that, Andrew?
So it's certainly, I guess there's maybe two parts. So if you ask it to provide sources for something, it'll probably provide sources that don't exist. So if you know the content is AI generated, if it gives sources, you should not believe that they exist. It's filling in where it thinks there should be sources with something plausible. The second question about disinformation isn't necessarily about sources. I think it's about the ability to kind of flood the zone, just create many images, descriptions of events that haven't happened. So we saw kind of a small stock market dip in response to an image that appeared to show an explosion outside the Pentagon a few months ago. This is an issue where we clearly need to change how we interact with these. The question is whether it's a regulatory response or whether we can kind of develop antibodies and be able to. In this case, experts were easily able to identify that it was not a real image, but there was still a market reaction, right? Maybe everyone starts distrusting what they see on Twitter, and that's enough. Or maybe we need to do something more coordinated.
So the point of how can the general public avoid disinformation? See, the main thing is we are humans and it's AI. So the first thing we have to remember is whatever we get on ChatGPT, you have to take it with the thought that this information has been collected in a different way than humans would have. As humans, we reflect, we express ourselves through our intuition. We have experiential learning. We have all these things, and we put it together to come up with information. Whereas if you look at ChatGPT today, it's not using intuition. It's taking a bunch of data behind the scenes and putting it together. So like ChatGPT disclaims itself, you have to take it so that you already know that the information needs to be validated or seconded or whatever before you can conclude the information is accurate.
Yeah, not much to add besides chat. Do we want the answer? I think it's going to go back to nonsensical, but yeah.
We can try it.
Let's try it. Here it goes.
Let's see what GPT says.
As an AI developed by OpenAI, I am designed to generate text based on a wide range of inputs. I do not generate or disseminate disinformation deliberately. However, I can sometimes inadvertently produce inaccurate information, especially if the input question or prompt is based on false premises. Therefore, it's essential to maintain a critical perspective while interacting with AI.
Here we go.
Yep. I don't know if I feel particularly comforted by that. Yes, we have another question, please.
Yes, Carol McGuire. To expand on an earlier questioner's question, first of all, are there guardrails, are there rules, are there regulations? What's out there that governs this? And if not, where are those going to come from and who is going to develop those? I have, as I know most people in this room probably do, some grave concerns about the misuse of this and how it will be governed going forward.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
Or do you want to take that?
So my answer was going to be, I'm not certain there are a lot of guardrails right now, aside from any guardrails or any sense of ethics or responsibility that the developers are bringing to it. There's no, as yet, there's no government policy, although there's certainly conversations. I think Senator Schumer has started talking in these terms. If we're going to look for regulations, my guess would be to look to the Europeans, to look to the EU. They've long been in front on regulations in the tech sector. And if I were to see where regulations are going to come from, my guess is they'll start in Brussels and sort of spread from there. Andrew, please.
Add a little bit to that. I think many officials in the U.S. have taken the perspective that AI is covered under existing legislation. So, for example, instance, the FTC has regulatory power over AI. They've claimed that they do, but these are all still playing out in the courts. So we don't really know. I mean, the way the U.S. system works, we don't really know what the guardrails are until the cases happen. And the EU is more of a civil law place, so they need legislation to start acting, and they're far ahead on that front. We may have new legislation in the U.S. eventually, but there's sort of this delay based on how the legal system works.
If only people consulted with futurists first before this happened. Doug, another question?
They should do that. Does OpenAI, quote, live in any one place or data center? Could it be hacked or commandeered?
That's a good question. I don't know that one.
Do you want me to? Okay, so OpenAI, the systems run on Microsoft's cloud. So you may have seen Microsoft invested like $10 billion in OpenAI. A lot of that is computing credits. So it's saying that you can run your models on our servers. Microsoft's cloud is distributed geographically. So there's no particular data center which is responsible for the responses. Could it be hacked? In principle, yes, it would be really challenging, and Microsoft has a huge business reason to try to keep their cloud secure.
I'm Lee Viestvang, the Chief Information Officer at Denison University, and I have two questions. One, can you talk a little bit more about what a catastrophic takeoff scenario would look like and kind of how that happens? And then the second is, if we look 2 or 3 years out into the future, what do you see as the distinct and important role that humans play in work versus AI? And I'm curious about what that means for what our students need to be learning and how that needs to look different in their education right now.
Maybe I can try to quickly take the catastrophic takeoff one, and I'll hand off. I think many of the theories go that you'll have a system that can become self-improving. So imagine a ChatGPT that then orders itself to be further trained on new data which it has collected, and then creates copies of itself, and somehow this army of intelligences can then do something bad, like accrue real-world political power. It requires a lot of things need to happen for that sequence of events to happen, which is why I think I and many experts aren't very concerned about a catastrophic takeoff in the short term.
The only thing I'd add to that is looking at, I suppose, recent history. In some ways, our conversations today about ChatGPT and about generative AI, I think, have to be placed in a wider historical context. We were having, I don't know if CMC were doing it, but we were having hand-wringing conversations in 1997 when IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov at chess. And you know, there was, I think it was the front of Time magazine or Newsweek or something, it said, "The brain's last stand." And of course, you know, the world still goes on. I mean, we have other sorts of challenges, climate change or something like that. At the time, I was writing a column, and I said, well, first of all, this is not a big deal. Computer scientists have been trying to develop a program that'll defeat humans at chess. They've been doing this for 40, 50 years. Finally took them this long to do it. Besides, I said, I won't live to see the day that a computer will defeat a human being at Go, which is infinitely more complex. April 2016, Google's DeepMind beat the best Go player. And in fact, and this is where I'm going with this, when you look at games like chess and Go, it's not just that the machines can beat like the best human players. They are, first of all, they can become grandmasters in the matter of 24 to 48 hours. They become that good, that fast. And it's not just that they're good, it's not just that they're beating people. Chess and Go, they use a rating. It's called an ELO rating. It's a number. I think the best chess player right now is like around 2,800, 2,900, something like that. The best Go playing programs are at about 5,000 right now. So it's not just that they're better than humans, they are significant orders of magnitude better than humans. Let's come back in 3 years and see what ChatGPT is like, and we'll be talking in the same way. We'll be talking about, you know, it was a little glitchy, a little, repetitive, and it keeps saying, oh, I'm not that intelligent. Is that what the situation is going to look like in 3 years' time? Or will we see ChatGPT improve by orders of magnitude?
I have to jump on. It's just too
Please.
juicy. I have to do a quick follow-up. I think, so illustrating chess. Chess is something that humans, our brains are just uniquely, really poorly suited for, right? Computers are great at chess. Humans, our brains just don't do well at chess. And so when you're evaluating these systems, I mean, we've had super intelligent calculators for a really long time now. You should look at the things that you find easy. Some of those things you won't think are impressive, but it's surprising how bad systems can be at that.
Yeah, I want to share a perspective. This is, and I know we got to wrap, right? So quick perspective on the catastrophic piece or the growth with this. The synonym that I use is what happened with COVID, right? Not from a negative standpoint, but how fast we shifted technologically. If you even think about virtual, right? We really didn't use virtual as much, but all of a sudden we had to do it. I feel like we're going to have a similar situation here with chat, right? Or with AI, where we're going to shift really, really fast. So I think the thing is, how do we embrace it, how do we engage it, and be a part of that growth, because it's definitely happening really quickly.
And I'll just give a coda to Lee's question. I think, as I'm looking out 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 years or so, I think the future is going to be one where humans and generative AI or autonomous systems like this will be working together, partnering together, and they'll become so ubiquitous in our systems and our environments that I think we'll reach a stage where we won't think much about them. Part of what I think we were trying to accomplish here today, that this seems a little odd today that ChatGPT was up here as a panelist. Again, go out in 5 years or so, and maybe this won't seem so odd. It'll be sort of expected that some sort of autonomous system would be a participant every bit as much as a human being. We're getting the wrap-up sign, so I think it's time to turn back over to Eddie Pauline. Thank you.
Well, I hope everyone found today's forum feeding your curiosity about this really interesting space. I was sitting there listening, thinking to myself, as you were critiquing the system, there are real people that I have conversations with that respond to me not too different than. So when I consider that, maybe it's not that different. Great forum. Again, thank you for today's generous forum sponsors, Regionomics and Accenture, and to the Grange Insurance Audubon Center for hosting us. Thank you again to our virtual seat patrons, and to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for a live stream. And a special shout out to, I think this was mentioned, but Walker Evans with the Columbus Underground for, there you are, for suggesting this forum topic, really interesting. And again, to our very special speakers, Kevin Lloyd, Padma Sastry, Andrew Perrault, ChatGPT, of course, and our host, David Staley. Thank you. Next week, please make plans to check out Made in Ohio, the coming manufacturing supercycle, which will be our next topic here at the Columbus Metropolitan Club. Thank you.